Hello, before we start, this video has some spoilers for Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls, Danganronpa V3, and Persona 5. If you'd like to avoid Danganronpa V3 spoilers, then just be an auditory listener. Though the Persona 5 and Ultra Despair Girls spoilers are mentioned auditorily. The Persona 5 spoiler isn't that big of a spoiler. This video also goes into discussion of story topics that include triggering subject matter that includes child exploitation, child sexual assault, child abuse, insensitive remarks towards abuse victims, and incest. So if you're sensitive to those sorts of subject material, please be very careful as you watch, as Zanki Zero handles this stuff very badly. Zanki Zero is a great game, is what I'd say if it were great. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying this video was a joke put on a punishment wheel during a subathon, where I had to make a video about Zanki Zero. Everyone said it was okay if I just made some 5-minute video or a YouTube short just going, "I love Zanki Zero," in a joking manner and call it a day, but I don't personally want to send that message or put any amount of effort into making a video if I don't have my heart put into it. So here I am making a long ass video that will waste away more of my life and maybe get 20 views instead. Zanki Zero is definitely a game. I think it has the potential as a game series, but it dropped the bag so far with its handling on things, especially the plot and writing of the games, that it has badly impacted my opinion on Spike Chunsoft games just in general. And I love Spike Chunsoft games, despite how almost every game I've played by them has something wildly insensitive that it doesn't really handle well. But usually, like with Persona, I can look away and just enjoy the game for being a game. But somehow, I just can't do that with Zanki Zero. There's just a stench this game has given off. A pungent smell that not even the world's sweatiest Smash Bros. Player could defeat. And the thing that sucks about that? Well, I kinda enjoyed Zanki Zero for maybe the first and last dungeons and saw a lot of potential in it, especially in its strong survival dungeon crawling mechanics. So for this video, I'm gonna be going over the good, the bad, and what I think they could have done different, so that I won't be looking at the scriptwriters of Spike Chunsoft without having to have my hand hover over a Child Protective Services speed dial on my phone. Zanki Zero is a dungeon crawling game where the plot starts with the protagonist Haruto waking up on the ruins of the beach, and he meets a young girl called Sachika, and whoa, already ringing some red bells here, Spike Chunsoft. So I'm gonna disclaim this video by saying the English version of Zanki Zero did in fact censor some things, namely changing some CGs in-game and maybe removing the ability to do certain things in life states. For now, I'll touch on that stuff when we actually get there, but usually the actual script is unchanged. So while they did zoom in on the camera to not show it, within the first 5 minutes of the game, we're getting a flash of a miner's panties, and she's slashing a 25-year-old. Real great way to start the plot. But considering this is the same people that did Ultra Despair Girls, I shouldn't be too surprised. Take a shot every time I say that, it will be coming back a lot. Anyways, Sachika takes Haruto to meet with other survivors on the island, and while they look into where the fuck they are, Haruto and another character, Rinko, get killed by a tentacle, and it's discovered that everyone is actually a clone that, when killed, can be revived with their X seed, and the cells in their body rage rapidly. Oh, and when you revive as an elementary school student. Oh, I'm sure the plot will definitely not ever be weird about that, to the point that you can put the elementary age body in compromising situations that had to get censored for the English release. What you think this is, a Spike Chunsoft game? Oh, wait. So yeah, I'm sure you're noticing a pattern here. Zanki Zero is really weird about how it treats minors. But we're only at the first 30 minutes, and the stuff I've talked about, well, I'm not sure if playing Danganronpa and Persona has desensitized me to this stuff or what, but this stuff is stuff I usually just cringe or barf in my mouth a little bit, but continue playing like it's no biggie. But no, Zanki Zero is truly a kusoge of its own caliber. For the rest of the video, I'm mostly going to be harping on it, so for now, let me touch upon the stuff I actually like about this game. I really enjoyed the gameplay loop of Zanki Zero, even if I had some issues with it. The time system could be a bit annoying sometimes, and how you'd have to be traveling back to base to revive someone simply for dying of old age a lot. The traps and puzzles of later dungeons became way too nonsensical or drag out for way too long for padding. Or even on the inverse, some dungeons are actually way too short to where the pacing they put in for dungeons is really weird. It's almost as if the devs were on short time and just had to poop out a character's backstory rapid fire. Ryo's dungeon is truly suffering. You'll find out why even more later. But generally, the loop of traveling through dungeons is fun. The combat system is simple but also complex, and I like how deaths reward you with bonuses to gameplay when you revive. There are some things that could have been better explained or implemented, like how monsters have various weak points, where charging into them when your cursor is on a specific spot can drop different items, or the throwing system, which I didn't even know existed until Yuma's dungeon, which is 4 dungeons into the game. I found myself having fun at the start of the game exploring the dungeons because I thought generally they were built well, except for I'd say Yuma, Rinko, and Mamoru's dungeons. Yuma had some really shitty puzzles to navigate. Rinko's boss battle was something I truly think should be killed with fire, and I believe the devs probably didn't playtest it themselves unless they're masochists. And Mamoru's dungeon had some really annoying monster mechanics that wound up causing a lot of cheap deaths. The other dungeons are pretty good, with Zen's being probably my favorite, but I did enjoy how Ryo's changed each day according to the tides, though I pray you don't drop anything important accidentally because of this. The game features base building where you're rewarded with more features to improve your survivability, like being able to cook food, make weapons, sleep in a hotel to pass time to an age you like, or a bathroom to pee in instead of a bottle. Each character also has a tree of skills that is unique towards that character's personality, so some people are really good at doing specific things, while others can be really adaptable, which is an excellent usage of gameplay that is influenced by its characters' personalities. Another thing I really like is in the hotel, you can pair up people to sleep with each other. As they get closer, they'll wind up being romantically involved, and it is not kept strictly to straight pairings. So, if you ship 2 dudes, get your yaoi and prosper. Let's just not think about how in Japan you can make the child form sleep with people, or how you can pair Sachika and her brother up. Even if for most of the game no one knows they're related, that is still a bad move from the devs' part, and maybe you know since Sachika is like 15 and the other characters are in their 20s, you really just shouldn't allow Sachika to sleep with them at all, or ever have any romantically charged events, if you do at least, and just have it be platonic. The game does have a mechanic where Sachika drains her stamina if she's not sleeping with someone else either, and she's typically the one that's left alive to revive everyone else. So if you're using the hotel to age people, you're likely gonna be pairing Sachika up to sleep with people, so you don't accidentally have her die on the way to the machine from no stamina or whatever. I'm falling back into the negatives, and I think I've gone over the positives of the game, so can I finally complain in depth about this stuff? In Zanki Zero, there's these Monokuma and Monomi-esque characters, Sho and Mirai. I despise them. Did you play Danganronpa V3 and hate the Monokubs? Me too! They were easily the worst part of the game, would make really unfunny jokes in a super insensitive way, and would drag out the plot for no real meaningful way. Sho and Mirai do have a slightly more justified reason to exist than the Monokubs, but they still have all of those issues with them. And in exchange, they turn up how horrible they are, especially Sho, up to 11. Yes, if you thought the Monokubs were worse, you truly have not seen hell. It's so hard being a Spike Chainsaw fan, man. I wanna say I like Danganronpa, but we don't ever talk about Ultra Despair Girls or Chapter 3 of V3 or the anime, man. It's kind of insane how I spent my life playing these games and recognizing them as having horrible subject material in them, but giving them the pass for so long. Zanki Zero has effectively ruined whatever goodwill I had for this company, to the point I'm scared of playing anything else from these devs. Zanki Zero has traumatized me beyond recognition, to where if I see something is done by Spike Chunsoft, I'll go on high alert because I just know it's gonna have pedo shit in it. I also feel the need to repeat here that the English version is censored, and people actually got upset about it because they want to see little girls in their underwear and watch a sexually charged cutscene, where it's pretty obvious the character's fucked with a PNG of a child in a morning after pose. You could argue it's only Sachika that's a minor in these scenes, and the characters other than her are in their mid-20s, but it is still explicitly them in their child bodies, and Sachika is not immune to this treatment as the only minor. You might think I'm being overly sensitive with this stuff, but especially how Sho is throughout the game, this shit is not to be understated. Sho is also modeled to look like a young child himself, and the game likes to point out that he's a prepubescent boy, frequently, while also having him be very perverted, and it's just... I know what you're doing, Spike Chunsoft, and I do not like it. At the start of the game, I can look away. Hell, Zanki Zero can handle sexual topics okay, like, once. Zen's dungeon touches upon how his family is a fucked up family where his grandpa is actually his dad, and he sleeps with Zen's mom and just pretends that Zen's dad is the biological father while he runs some pimp ring and fools his whole family into thinking he's not threatening the women for sexual favors. I actually really like this plotline, and it made me feel for Zen and understand why he's such a pissed off person, since his whole life feels like it was founded on lies, and he didn't have a proper outlet of form of support in his life to properly process these emotions that led him into being a really jaded and asshole of a person. He legitimately despises himself, and he despises his family because his family is that fucked up, and he takes it out on other people, and I kinda like that about him. The first 3 dungeons are pretty good, since it doesn't tackle children shit. Minamo's dungeon is kind of a nothing burger, but at least it isn't the rest of the game's dungeons. Yuma's dungeon starts up a very worrying trend with the rest of these dungeons, up until the last 2 dungeons of the game. Yuma is the rich daughter of a family that runs most of Japan, and has made a ton of technological stuff. Think of Monaka from Ultra Despair Girls, except Yuma doesn't pretend to be physically disabled to manipulate her friends. Though do think of the really weird family dynamic. Now, Yuma's family is pretty big for the plot, since they were part of the reason the world fell into shit and why everyone is a clone. Yuma's mother died at a young age, so Yuma's father became obsessed with researching a way to bring her back through cloning research. And what truly sucks here is Yuma's past involved her being gaslit by her mother into doing whatever her father likes as part of her duty of being a Mashiro. Well, surprise! Yuma's father is a gigantic creep that begins seeing his daughter as a replacement for his wife. His elementary school-age daughter, to make things even worse. There's even a flashback where Yuma is trying to go to her room to do homework because she is a child, and her father says the head of Mashiro is finally back, and you're gonna leave him all alone in his room. And in the same cutscene, he recognizes that Yuma is his daughter, and then proceeds to imply that they have sexual intercourse. What the hell is this shit? I can at least say that as you are being drip-fed this pedo shit, the characters that witness this backstory are visibly disgusted by it, and Rinko even tells Yuma that she is a victim of her father, and tries to help Yuma no longer see herself as nothing more than a doll for her father. It was a disgusting plotline that I thoroughly hated, but I can at least say that it was intended to be that way, and is not actually condoned by the main characters. How about we tackle a similar plotline of a minor being abused by their parent, and even include some more blatant pedo shit, but handle it even worse and have none of the characters involved in the story actually handle it well, actually recognize it as being horrible, except for like maybe one character. Literally, the very next dungeon is Ryo's dungeon, and Ryo's dungeon nearly made me quit the game. But I somehow beat the entire game for some masochistic reason, I guess. Now, Ryo is a bondage artist and photographer. He enjoys taking pictures of things bound in ropes and often says it's the ultimate expression of love to be bound by another. It's not exclusively sexual and more of an art thing for Ryo, but Ryo is the game's resident pervert character, so it's pretty obvious that the devs want you to see it that way, and also see his interest as funny in a weird way. Well, for his backstory, it starts with the revelation that Ryo literally does not have any memories of being a child before he was adopted, so he has no memories of his parents. And as the game drip feed you info, Ryo is also coming to know what his family is like as well. It's discovered that Ryo's mom had issues with being in relationship with men, and was very much the jealous type. She also neglected Ryo a lot and only really gave him attention when her lovers would give him attention, out of envy. One day, Ryo nearly gets run over by a vehicle when he didn't pay attention to his family, and his dad gets a child restraint for him to keep him safe. And Ryo becomes happy with his mom having him on a leash, because it's like one of the few times that she actually pays attention to him. I immediately got the message that his obsession with bondage stemmed from that, since it hits you over the head with it. One day, Ryo's dad dies, and in order to console his mom, he offers himself to be tied up by her to help her take out her frustrations on him. Ryo's mom would then neglect Ryo and keep him in the restraint, tied up to something in the house while she went on dates with other men. This starts an unhealthy relationship with his mom, where she would take out her frustrations on him by binding him and neglecting him, to the point his neighbors start to suspect she's abusing him, with how he's never allowed outside. One neighbor witnesses him being tied, and out of fear of Child Protective Services, they flee to go live in a hot spring with a man that his mom winds up dating. It's revealed that actually that man is a pedo and has the hots for her child. One day, when he's alone with the man, he makes advances on him, and Ryo tells his mother. Instead of protecting him from the pedo, though, his mom has a breakdown and tries to choke him to death, blaming him for their relationship falling apart and saying that he tempted the man. She does inadvertently protect him by killing the man and then herself, but that shit is fucked up beyond reason and fucked up Ryo mentally, where he would beat himself up and see himself as a no-good person. But to make matters worse, Shell makes a very distasteful comment about how the creepy guy could have kept getting away with it and that it was a shame that he got caught. What? And that line's played like it's supposed to be a joke! Did the writer for this seriously expect anyone to actually laugh at that? And you might be thinking, well, shows like the Monokuma type character, being edgy with black humor, so you're not supposed to like his jokes. Explain how the rest of the cast, the main characters, react then. At one point, after the abusive mother reveal, Ryo wants to express why he likes bondage and sees it as a freeing thing. The characters all treat him like a weirdo, and at one point even beat him up for it. Yes, beat up the man that got abused by his family. What a great message to send to someone who developed an obsession with bondage out of trauma! Only one bitch actually tried to understand him and ask him about trying out bondage, and for that, Haruto will be the only GOAT alongside Zen and Ryo for this fucking cast. Like, it's fair to not want to be bondaged up, but they should have just been like, nah, that's not my thing, but I'm happy you have that form of expression, that helps, instead of call him a pervert and hit him. Ugh! Rinka was so empathetic to Yuma during her backstory, but no one even spoke up as Ryo's backstory was revealed, other than to call him a pervert, and it just flabbergasted me to see. This shit's unforgivable! This is a permanent stain on Spike Chunsoft's record for me. There was nothing to take away from this plotline in a good way. And it's such a double standard too, since Ryo is the comic relief character compared to how Yuma is handled. I just really don't like the implications. Men being abused and boys being lusted after by pedophiles is serious too. It's not a fucking joke. So yeah, Ryo's dungeon legit just made me want to quit this game. But I kept going on, and the child put into sexually exploitative situations just never stops. Do you think the writer for this generally has some sort of lolly obsession? It's one thing to do it once, twice might be pushing it, but we're going 3 dungeons in a row, baby! Takayuki Sugawara, for legal reasons this is a joke, but you are... Anyways, remember Rinko, sweetheart of Yuma's dungeon that said she was a victim for how Yuma was treated by her dad, actively dead to me for pulling a end of 7th Palace Ryuji punch session on Ryo after learning about his trauma? Well, if you made a bingo and put Rinko on it as a child that was sexually exploited, you would be correct. Rinko's whole life has involved her being bullied. Elementary school was better since she was friends with the garage kids, but in middle school she transferred to a new school with none of her friends attended and wound up getting bullied alone. The girls at her school pressure her into tempting her teacher into having sex with her for some reason. I guess they wanted him to be seen as a sexual deviant. Okay, whatever. Instead of going with it, she winds up telling her teacher what the girls told her to do, and yeah, you think the story's gonna end with the teacher actually being a decent person and confronting the girls? Yeah, no. He pressures her into having sex with him, otherwise he won't help protect her from the bullies. And then rumors go around to Rinko's high school boyfriend that she slept with her teacher. Now she'll sleep with anyone. The reason he knows is because instead of reporting her teacher for being a pedo, her classmates took photos of them walking to a hotel and spread among her classmates to bully Rinko more. And then she gets a new boyfriend that will protect her so long as they date and have sex. I think this is an improvement from Ryo's, who is definitely the peak of bullshit this game has to offer, but I still found this storyline upsetting for 2 reasons. For one, each character's backstory is committed to the sin they commit, and Rinko's is the sin of lust. I know lust can mean many things, but I can't help but find it weird when the game shows Rinko doesn't sleep with people because she enjoys it, but rather she feels like she has to, like she's pressured into it, whether it's because she's being threatened to, or whether it's to give her a means of protection from people that want to harm her. And the whole teacher plotline is hella dumb. Maybe the girls knew that the teacher was a sexual deviant, and that's why they made Rinko try to sleep with him, but I just can't help but find the whole plotline needlessly cruel. It felt kinda like reading torture porn. Rinko is the protagonist of Metamorphosis? I guess their hairstyle is pretty similar. Anyways, at the end of the day, Rinko's story continues the trend of using child exploitation as a backstory, and at this point, I feel it gets too excessive. Now, while all the characters in this game are connected through their childhood, I think it's really weird for a good chunk of the cast's trauma to be because of sexual exploitation. I'm not saying you can't use that as a backstory, but with how badly Ryo's was handled, I think they should have stopped it at Yuma's. The fact this stuff kept going on made me think it legitimately is getting a rise from the writer, since the actual shock value has left the building by the point of Rinko's story. I saw it coming a mile away, especially since she's supposed to be the lust sin girl. The plot points overstayed its welcome. And now the game begins the second to last dungeon. Yes, the game did have a good chunk of its dungeons in a row be about shitty pedo child exploitation backstories all in a row. Can you at least space it out a bit? Luckily, Mamoru's dungeon isn't too bad since his sin isn't that he's a pedo, though his dad is really fucking weird. I actually felt like the plot was improving? The game had a good surprise villain twist, and the dungeon, while frustrating at some points, were paced in a way I really enjoyed. I still think Mamoru is an absolute dumbass, because he knows every character's backstories and still decides to torture them for pointing at Sachiko when they were kids? Okay, so when they were elementary school kids, Mamoru was a doctor at the school, and Sachika is his little sister. One day, a mass murderer comes and forces them to close their eyes and point at someone randomly, and he'll kill the majority voted child in front of them. All the kids loved Sachika and thought she was a genius and figured no one would vote for Sachika, so naturally, everyone except for Sachika voted for Sachika. And instead of Mamoru, I don't know, wanting to get revenge on the one that actually murdered his sister, he made the whole game centered around making everyone else suffer, and even worked with the murderer? Make it make sense, man! Which sin of theirs is Mamoru referring to when he's the only one that is an actual kidnapper, murderer, and participant in the genocide of the entire human race? He also says shit about how Ryo should be grateful for having a mother when, I'm sorry, did you not pay attention to Ryo's backstory at all when you made those videos? So, what, Mamoru is an abusive parent apologist? But sure, let's blame some kids for being pressured into pointing at someone. I fucking hate this plotline, man. And not only that, but everyone just forgives him? Haruto died because of him. He was about to have them killed without any way to revive, working with the killer who actually did murder his sister, not to mention having him murder her clone over and over. Like, how fucked up and dumb is that plotline? And it's just wrapped up with them saying his frozen heart was thawed out? What motherfucking what? Beat his ass with hammers! Kill him! He calms down after it's discovered Sachika's original personality still lives within her, despite how clone Sachika didn't have the same personality, so he becomes nice and stops trying to kill them. But then it's revealed it's an AI of his dad who took over a part of Sachika's body and overwrote her and pretended to be the original Sachika to manipulate Mamoru into not killing them for some reason. For one, how does this work? How do you overwrite someone if you're just a machine armed attached to her? She's still a flesh and blood human. She's not an AI herself. And then it starts some bullshit plot about how Sachika's different from everyone else because she has a rare X key that prevents the aging process. And then they start talking about how she's the only one that can conceive a child. When I tell you my flight or flight instincts went to heights when they started talking about that, you have no idea. So now everyone's gonna wanna have sex with the child to repopulate humanity? Well, that's too bad, ? Because their dad comes and tries to kill her because blah ha ha ha, evil man, pain of giving birth, etc, etc. And because Sachika's such a pure-hearted girl, she gets close to her dad after literally everyone telling her not to and how he's gonna kill her. And she gets killed by him! Wow, who could have seen that one coming? But luckily, there's a machine after they kill him and it somehow lets them give birth to Sachika again, this time as a baby infant without an X key. And so the end of the game happens where they start raising her as a child, and then slowly the machine they use to revive every person stops working, and everyone rapidly dies out except for Sachika, and she's still like a little teeny tiny child when everyone dies. So before Haruto dies, he reveals there's one final human left on Earth. So somehow child Sachika is able to go out in this land without getting absolutely bodied by wild creatures. And eventually, after a couple years, she falls off a cliff and dies. I mean, gets rescued by a guy and then they, I guess, have sex and restore humanity. Yippee! And that really is just Zanki Zero, isn't it? Is it an author's poorly hidden pedophilia? Perhaps not. Is it torture porn? Maybe. Maybe not. Is it a dumbass plot that uses shock humor without any resemblance of sensitivity and said jokes aren't even funny or written well for the most part? Absolutely. And that sucks, cause again, I really do enjoy the gameplay loop of Zanki Zero, and the last two dungeons actually had some setups for a plotline that could have been interesting if dumbassery didn't run in Mamoru and Sachika's family bloodline. But they really squandered the potential for a plotline with this. Here's some stuff I'd like to change if I were Takayuki Sugawara. I wouldn't want to be Takayuki Sugawara because what I've found about him from just reading this game makes me not want to be anywhere close to him. But regardless, step 1, get rid of the pedo shit. I think this should be obvious. Instead of Yuma's dad being weird to her while also being aware that she's a child and projecting on her the image of her mom, maybe just have him fall down a hole of obsession and trying to revive his wife, and neglecting Yuma just altogether, having his staff take care of her and just never talk to her or show any care for her. Gluttony as a sin for Yuma is done in a pretty bad way already, so perhaps because of the neglect, Yuma becomes obsessed with using her wealth as the next heir to fill a hole in her heart left from her family situation. She gorges herself out on food and overindulges in material things to try to help herself through the neglect, to the point that she doesn't even realize her father's descent into madness until it's too late for her, and her father dies from his hubris. This still carries the abusive family plotline that Yuma's backstory has, but in a less torture porny way, and still makes use of her position as an heiress and her gluttony to be her sin. For Ryo, just don't do the fucking Hot Springs plotline at all? Have it end with the point of his mom getting Child Protective Services called on her. On one end, I'd like for Ryo's mom to kill the pedo because he is a pedo, but I feel like the whole pedo plotline made it too edgy when there was already enough sauce for Ryo's trauma, and his mother being the focus of his sin and trauma just makes the inclusion of that guy feel a bit pointless. For Rinko, instead of her sin of lust being around being forced to sleep with people, have her herself willingly want connections with people, starting from middle school. Everyone in the Garage Kids lose their memories of Sachika, but in Rinko's case, she can feel the hole left within her from no longer having a close-knit group of friends. They can continue having Rinko have sexual relations with people, but just keep them to kids her age that she wants to be with without being forced to. And perhaps even Rinko's sin of lust could be that she expected too much from her friends instead of the sexual angle of lust. Her love for her friends makes her become possessive over them and demand them to spend time with her at all times so she doesn't feel alone. But it winds up making her relations with her friends fall apart, and one day she finds herself all alone. Mamoru can find her when she's in that moment and easily kidnap her. This removes a good chunk of Shou's terrible lines, and since the game becomes less of a focus on the sexual exploitation of children, it can tone down all the degrading sexual comments of Shou as well. He can still be a wildly insensitive child, but without all this pedo shit. Remove the option for Sachika to sleep with the adults, or have her interactions be purely platonic with no morning after CG at all. I think just altogether the hotel mechanic kind of has implications with having characters share the same room. So instead you can have a bonfire to choose to sit at a small screen to decide who to eat dinner with, to bond with and end the day. This can pass the time for the same mechanic as the hotel. I do like that you can pair anyone up and have them date the person at the end of their interactions, but just have Sachika's last events always only be platonic or like a sibling closeness instead of having romantic implications. Remove the Sachika panty CG scene altogether, especially since it's technically her dad controlling her body. I know the scene is to show her unique X key, but they can either just have her design chains so she doesn't need to lift her dress, or just have an event like the start with Haruto and Rinko, where Sachika gets killed to show that she has a unique X key instead. That's literally all they can do to show that without it being weird. Step 2. Make Mamoru's betrayal plotline less dumb. Maybe just altogether have Mamoru try to kill the others out of fear instead of revenge. Kurosuke could be the first to wake up on the island, that's the guy that murdered Sachika, and he activates Mamoru's machine and then threatens to kill the others if he doesn't do what he tells Mamoru to do. As Kurosuke is sadistic just naturally, he could view the events of the game all as a fun way to mess with them for kicks and be able to torture them over and over again. Maybe Mamoru just does not hate Sachika at all and views her as his sister from the start. So Kurosuke threatens him to kill everyone, or else he'll kill Sachika again. But Mamoru is unable to kill the others, which results in the Kurosuke chase scenes throughout the game. And Haruto's death could instead be done explicitly by Mamoru, because of Kurosuke's threats getting to his head too much, that he destroys Haruto's X-Key himself in hopes to appease him or give him more time before he hurts his sister. This makes the sympathy for Mamoru come across as not out of nowhere, since Mamoru shows hesitation in hurting everyone over the course of the game, while still ultimately betraying them because he wants to protect his sister. The revenge can come with him wanting to get revenge on Kurosuke, and the sin tapes can be Kurosuke blackmailing Mamoru to hurry up and kill the others for him. Otherwise, he'll reveal secrets that cause dissent among the others, like with Monokuma's gifts in Danganronpa. I just think in general, Kurosuke being the main villain works better thematically, though Mamoru's betrayal is an interesting twist if done correctly. You'll also notice I didn't mention Daichi at all, and that's because I think Daichi being included just kind of derails the entire plot. I think you can get backstory with Daichi, you can get some implications on how he treated Sachika and Mamoru to give some backstory on why Mamoru values Sachika so much. And you can also talk about how Kurosuke and Daichi worked together and stuff. But I think altogether just having Daichi be dead and not meddle in the plotline and have Kurosuke be the one that's behind everything be a better net positive for the plot in general. Step 3. Fix the ending. I felt it ending with everyone running out of juice and dying to be dumb. I find everyone except Sachika being unable to conceive to be dumb. Don't have Sachika get killed by Daichi and have them defeat Kurosuke and saying that they'll find a way to restore humanity in their own terms, even if the machine that Daichi made turns out to be unable to fix their X keys. Have them actually make a machine to fix the impurities of the X key for reals and be able to live out their lives and restore humanity. There can even be an ending CG with the people you pair up together through the bonding mechanic to have kids. I get this gives Sachika a bit less narrative importance, but this can be solved by having Sachika being the one to actually make the machine that fixes their impurities, showing that she herself is a genius, not just her past self that got killed by Kurosuke. And again, this compounds with my changes to Mamoru by having Sachika, while still different from original Sachika, showed that she has parts about herself that remind Mamoru of original Sachika, and kept him in that state of still caring and valuing Sachika, despite her memories and persona being different. I think if the story changed like this, the game would be fine. Minor gripes with the game's mechanics aside, the actual gameplay loop of the game itself is solid. Maybe fix the inventory to feel less like I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV, and maybe for the creatures that work behind you, get an auditory implication of their presence to help reduce cheap deaths to them. Maybe make Ryo's dungeon more spaced out with the reveals so it doesn't feel like a rushed out dungeon, and actually have the characters react to his revelations and show sympathy to him for his abuse, and connect that his obsession with bondage is a result of his trauma. Zanki Zero could become a great game, but with its story the way it is, it's just a game with great ideas held down in its execution, and I think that's a ginormous shame. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. It was kind of interesting thinking up how I myself would change the game, which helped me see a bit more just the general plot holes the game had. I understand I can come off a bit like an old person clutching pearls throughout this video, but I really don't think sexual exploitation of children should be used for shock value in the way that Takayuki Sugawara did it. Ultra Despair Girls already did a poorly handled portrayal of this that got backlash from fans, so this really isn't it. I sincerely hope Spike Chunsoft games in the future step away from these plotlines, because with how much they do it, it starts coming off less like it's supposed to be seen as horrifying, and more like they're appealing to the people that enjoy it. Especially since this game originally had some really weird CGs, and now the fanbase is filled with people that actually want that shit restored for some reason. But if that's the hill Spike Chunsoft wants to die on, then I guess I won't be walking up any more of their hills. I like hyping up games more than I do tearing down games, so these type of videos hopefully won't be produced much after this one, but I hope you enjoyed it regardless. If you did enjoy, consider subscribing or sending me a Ko-fi for some extra support. Videos like this take a long time to make, and my YouTube isn't monetized, so any support helps. With that, I'll see you all later.